Manchester United 7 points off the relegation zone. How concerned are you about how far they could fall, Alex Crook?
Well, I think in one of your questions there, you said to Ruben, could the worst still be to come? And I think it will be. We're going to be at Liverpool on Sunday. I know that somehow they ground out a 0-0 draw there under Erik ten Hag last season. That is going to be another obliteration. If United are anywhere near as poor as they were in that first half an hour last night, it's the worst I've ever seen a Manchester United team play. It could be 8 or 9-0 at Anfield. That isn't an exaggeration. Then they go to Arsenal in the FA Cup. Their record at Arsenal is atrocious anyway. They've already lost there once under Amorim, so they're going to go out of that competition. So I think the nadir is still to come. And there are a few question marks about Amorim this morning. I thought his team selection was partly to blame for that first half an hour. You can't go into a game against a side with the energy and the efficiency of Newcastle with a midfield pair of Christian Eriksen and Casemiro. He realised that was a mistake when he took off Xerxes. We'll talk about him and the reaction from the Old Trafford fans later. But they looked a much better team when Kobbie Mainoo came in and actually gave them some legs in midfield. So I think you do have to lay some of the blame at the manager's door. But I'm asking serious questions of INEOS this morning, Sam. They were there last night. Jason Wilcox, whose rise has been quite incredible, really, when you think it wasn't that long ago that he was in charge of the academy at Manchester City. Then he goes to Southampton. They're bottom of the Premier League, so you could argue that Jason Wilcox's recruitment has got one team 20th in the table and one 14th. You've got Omar Barada there, who's clearly very experienced, chief executive at the top level, but he's not covered himself in glory either. I didn't see the cycling fella in the stands last night, so I'm not sure where Dave Brailsford was, but I think you've got to look at INEOS's year in charge now and ask if they've taken the club backwards, because they did it over Erik ten Hag. You said numerous times on this station and on our podcast as well that clearly they didn't think Erik ten Hag was the right man for the job. They should have been much bolder there in the summer. Instead, they gave him a new contract that cost them more to pay him off. They then lavished him with new signings that clearly don't fit Ruben Amorim. I mentioned, I think last week, that Amorim was actually offered to Manchester United when they were looking for a new manager, when they were doing that beauty parade in INEOS in the summer, and they said, well, he doesn't really fit the squad. That's true. So why have you appointed him now? You've got the Dan Ashworth situation where they spent millions and months prizing him away from Newcastle and then sacked him less than 6 months into the job. And all the time, they're making really unpopular decisions off the field as well, not least relieving Sir Alex Ferguson of his ambassadorial role. They cut the Christmas bonus for non-playing staff, which didn't go down well. There's waves of redundancies. And then we find out yesterday they've even cut their donations to their own charity. So I think we need Sir Jim Ratcliffe to come on, and he spoke a lot when he first became minority owner about his plans for the football club. What are you doing now, Jim? Because you've taken over this institution. You claim to be a boyhood fan of the club, and they're sleepwalking into a relegation fight. I'd argue that Manchester United have never been in a worse state of flux than they are since INEOS came in.
Well, 1974, they were relegated. It is the 50th anniversary of that this year. And Manchester United probably at their lowest ebb since then, I think. I think when you talk about INEOS, I think a lot of what you've said is absolutely true. I think it should also be put into the context that this is off the back of 20 years of managed decline from the Glazers, who have been using Manchester United, their megastore and their commercial arm, as a cash machine for the last 20 years. So I think to put all of the blame on INEOS and not mention the Glazer word would be unfair. But I do think that there's also fingers that need pointing to people that have been in recruitment positions previously and not brought in the requisite players to play for Manchester United. The decision to appoint a manager now in November, when they had the opportunity to appoint him in the summer and recruit players for him, seems a very odd thing to do. But he's got to outlast those players now.
Yeah.
He's got to be the one that they invest in. He's got to be the fulcrum of what comes next. Because if you now take away his power, it's a pointless appointment and you've wasted yet another year. You've got to do everything you can to make this guy work. And if that means sacrificing some players and egos and upsetting people, then that is what has got to happen. Because this club is I'm not even sure it is on the floor, but it's heading very close to that way. And until they hit rock bottom, they ain't going to start coming back the other way. I said to him last night, Do you have to understand that it's going to get worse before it gets better? And he was basically saying, yeah. What he also said in the press conference afterwards, and I went to that last night, he said that the club was in need of a shock. He said, and there's a brilliant quote actually, where he says, "I don't like to arrive here and make excuses. I think people were tired of excuses at this club. I think our club needs a shock. We need to understand this is a very difficult moment and we have to fight." And they need to see some of that on the pitch. Manchester United fans, what happens next? 03717223344. How does Ruben Amorim fix this club? And can he do it on his own? He needs support from above. He needs support from the stands as well. And I mean, look, I said this last night to you. I thought the fact the fans stayed right to the very end was impressive, because that first half an hour was probably the worst half an hour of football I've ever seen Manchester United play. 03717223344. But there was an incident with Joshua Zirkzee, and we will talk about that next. You're listening to Sam Matterface and Alex Crook.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.